All right, let's talk about a number so big it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. We're diving deep into the U.S. national debt. Now I know, it's a topic that can feel buried in confusing numbers and politics. But today, we're going to break it down slide by slide and see what this all really means for you, for me, for all of us.
So let's just jump right in. Look at this number. Over $11 billion. Now that's not the debt itself. Oh no. That's just the interest payment. Think of it as the fee for borrowing all that money. And it gets paid every single week. No breaks, no holidays, just a constant, staggering bill.
So, how do we even begin to understand a weekly bill that big? To really get a handle on the scale of this thing, we need to zoom out and look at the whole financial picture.
Okay, so here are the hard numbers. The total national debt, a mind-boggling $38 trillion. That weekly interest payment we just saw, well, in just the first 9 weeks of the fiscal year, it's already added up to $104 billion. But here's the part that really gets me. That interest now makes up 15% of all federal spending. That's a huge chunk of our money gone before we even talk about roads, healthcare, or defense.
You know, a problem this massive demands some pretty big solutions. So what's being proposed? Well, one of the major ideas on the table is what you could call a tariff-funded fix. The basic thinking is, hey, we need more money coming in to fight this rising tide of debt.
The plan itself is actually pretty straightforward. By putting tariffs, which are basically just taxes on stuff coming into the country, the goal is to open up a whole new massive income stream for the government.
And we are not talking about chump change here. This plan is projected to bring in $3 trillion in new revenue by 2035. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a fantastic, bold move, right? Exactly what we need. But well, there's a pretty big catch.
And here's where it gets really interesting. See, like with most giant economic plans, the devil is always in the details. Welcome to what's being called the dividend dilemma, a situation where the proposed solution might actually make the whole problem worse.
Let's break this down. Annually, the tariff plan is expected to pull in somewhere between $300 and $400 billion. That is a serious amount of cash for the U.S. Treasury. So far, so good, right?
And here's the twist. The plan isn't just about collecting money, it's also about giving a chunk of it back to people as a dividend. But just look at the math here. You've got about $400 billion coming in and $600 billion going out. The scales are tipped completely in the wrong direction.
This is the core of the problem. The idea is to give every person a $2,000 dividend. Sounds great, but that adds up to a massive $600 billion expense every year. So instead of shrinking the deficit, you could actually make it bigger. It's kind of like trying to fill a bucket that's already leaking by pouring water in from an even leakier bucket. So if that plan has a major flaw, what's next? Let's zoom out from the specific proposals and look at the bigger picture. Because there are some global forces at play, and what looks like a huge risk might also hide a truly massive opportunity.
First thing to realize is the U.S. is not alone in this, not by a long shot. This quote from Deutsche Bank basically says high deficits are a global problem. They're predicting that governments are about to start spending even more, which is going to set off alarm bells everywhere about whether any of this debt can ever be paid back.
And they put a number on it for the U.S. They're projecting the deficit will hit 6.7% in 2026. Now that might just sound like a number, but it's a huge red flag. And 2026? That's not some distant future. It's right around the corner. It makes this all feel very real and very immediate.
But okay, let's step away from the immediate policy debates and deficit projections, because some economists are seeing something else on the horizon, a financial tsunami, but not a risk, a potential resource. We're talking about a massive, generational transfer of wealth that is just getting started.
And the number here is just, wow, $80 trillion. Let's put that in perspective. Remember the $38 trillion national debt? This is more than double that. It's what they're calling the Great Wealth Transfer, all the money expected to pass from older generations to younger ones in the next couple of decades.
So, the billion, or I guess trillion-dollar question is, could this private wealth be used to help with public finances? Well, as UBS chief economist Paul Donovan points out here, this isn't some crazy new idea. Governments have a long history of finding ways to mobilize private money to support the state.
One of the key ways they do this is a concept called financial repression. I know it sounds super intense, But what it boils down to is the government using different rules and policies to gently steer private money towards government borrowing, making it cheaper and easier for them to get the funds they need.
So how exactly could a government tap into that $80 trillion transfer? Well, according to Paul Donovan, there are two main paths. You could call them the carrot and the stick. The first path is influence. That's the carrot. You use incentives and regulations to make people want to put their savings into things like government bonds. The second path is tax. That's the stick. You just implement or increase taxes on things like inheritance or capital gains.
And all of this leads us to one final huge question. As these trillions of dollars in private wealth start moving from one generation to the next, are we heading for a future where the line between our personal bank accounts and the government's balance sheet gets redrawn? The answer to that could define our economy for decades to come.